clones real, first of all? Absolutely. This is not a scientific, sci-fi, fictional idea anymore. This is very much an advanced piece of technology that has been going on for a long time. And cloning in plants specifically has been going on for much longer than cloning in animals. However, clones of animals do exist. And in 1996, Dolly the Sheep was created. And this was one of the first breakthrough pieces of research that actually was very successful, in the fact that Dolly the sheep was a fully functioning organism, from a parent organism, essentially, that had been used to clone this organism we now know as Dolly. Of course, there are lots of ethical considerations, which we will discuss in this topic as well. And we're going to talk about the process of how this is done, and moreover, why this is done as well. But during this topic, lots of students often ask me in class, are twins clones? Can we clone plants? Can we clone humans? Have we cloned humans? Etc. So let's just clarify a couple of these things. First of all, are twins clones? Technically, no. If you think about a clone, it's a genetically identical organism, so living thing. That is what we mean by organism. However, a twin is not a clone. Although those twins may be genetically identical to one another, they are not a clone of the parent, which is very important, because a clone is a genetic copy of the parent. So if you think about cell division like mitosis, that is essentially cloning a cell, because you're creating a cell that's not only genetically identical to the other cells, but the parent cell at which it came from. So twins are not necessarily considered clones. They are genetically identical to each other, but not the parent. And the next question was, can we clone humans? In theory, potentially yes. However, there are lots of ethical considerations regarding that. We want to think about the medical use or the need for this, especially with science and research. You often have to put proposals together. It has to get peer reviewed. It has to be sound. It has to be strongly linked to a need in the medical field. And at this stage in time, we don't have a medical need, really. You could argue the idea about transplants of organs and the low availability of those for people who may need a transplant. However, there are, like I said, so many ethical considerations here that we can't just say, yep, clone humans, that's absolutely fine, because of course lots of people will have ethical obligations, or ethical, thoughts about it. So we need to be very careful and mindful of that. But let's talk about the technology and what you need to know for GCSE. So in the case of adult cell cloning, this is the one that they use for Dolly the sheep. So we'll go with the sheep example. First of all, you have an organism which you are interested in creating more of. So the desired characteristics. You would take an organ cell. So in the case of Dolly the sheep, it was an udder cell that was taken from the organism of interest. And then the nucleus of that cell is removed from that adult cell. That's where adult cell cloning comes from, because we're taking a diploid cell, we're taking a fully formed adult cell, we're taking the genetic information of that from the nucleus. We then would take an egg cell from another organism in that species, and we would remove the nucleus of that egg cell and place the nucleus of the information that we're interested in of the organism into that empty egg cell. And then we would fuse it together using some electricity. And electric shock actually encourages cell growth. And then we would implant this embryo, this egg that has developed and started to divide, into the surrogate organism. And as you can see, once the baby is born, or the offspring is born, it would have the same genetic characteristics as the cloned organism. So the original one that we got that genetic information from. And as you can see, with my diagram that I've drawn here, you can see the phenotypes of the ones that are clones, not the surrogate. Okay, the surrogate is just the organism that holds on to and gestates, but the egg cell organism as well, this one will not share any genetic information. So it's just the one that has the nucleus removed. The nucleus is the bit of information that shares with the clone itself. Okay, and then we have an embryo transplant. So it's a slightly different version of cloning an animal. But essentially what you do is you would have an organism, a male and a female. They would have the sperm and egg cell fused together to form an embryo. That embryo would then be used to split up and break apart into smaller sections, and then allowed to divide again. So we actually end up with multiple clones that all look the same. And this is because that embryo has been able to divide. However, that embryo will have slight differences in genetics to the adult parents. So as you can see, the clones are clones of one another, not the parents themselves, because we're forming an embryo to begin with. So adult cell cloning is the one where people have a lot of ethical objections, because we're literally forming the exact same organism. Whereas embryo transplant, you're forming lots of different clones, but they're not the clones of the adult itself. So, speaking of ethical considerations, people often say that they're not happy about this technology because of the animal welfare and the risks to the animal itself. Also, the effects it could have on the environment if we have lots of the same animal or lots of the same plant, even when we do talk about plants, it could lead to problems with the ecosystem itself. And it could have an effect on those animals that are living there naturally. It could also lead to human cloning, and obviously the morality issues and the idea of religious reasons as well. But it could also encourage genetic diseases to develop. It could reduce genetic diversity. And of course, this idea of evolution, which Darwin theorized as natural selection, this would actually be reduced. And that's it from me today. I've been the GCSE science teacher, and you have been curious. If you did find this video interesting and helpful for your revision, let me know in the comment section. Give the video a thumbs up and do share this. Do subscribe as well if you haven't already. And I'll link some more information about Dolly the Sheep and other clone technologies that you may find interesting in the description box. In the meantime, have a great day, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.